Avidya isn't just a word in Berserk. It's both a prison and a distorting lens. And once you take off this lens, everything changes. But that's not the terrifying part about Avidya. The real terror isn't in being trapped by it, it is in not knowing you are trapped at all. Let's dive in. Now, just as you cannot know how to draw, ride a bicycle, play the guitar by merely reading about it, but instead by intense physical practice and correcting of errors, so that eventually your body can do what it has read. Avidya too can only be understood by personal and honest experience with it, so that your self can eventually perceive it. Intellectually grasping the idea won't cut it here, for all you will be grasping at our shadows in the dark. To get avidya, perception must be trained repeatedly, so that you don't just believe because someone told you to believe, you actually know. To quote the famous words of physicist Richard Feynman, the first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest to fool. This is because it is easy to fool oneself into believing one understands something merely because he has attached a label to it. It is easier to continue to believe in falsehoods when life does not force us to actually see if what we think we understand, we actually do understand. In that way, life, at least modern life, is merciful, where not every wrong belief is swiftly punished and corrected, leaving to us humans a diversity of ways to operate in the world. And in that same mercy, it is cruel to us, for we can live our whole life in ignorance, lying to ourselves, lying to others, deluding and amusing ourselves with comforting or terrifying sounding lies that appear as truth, as our brief life lived in darkness eventually comes to an end. This applies to you, the viewer of this video, just as much as it does to me. The point with saying all of this is that I can't succeed in communicating the idea of avidya to you. So I'll try the next best thing, that is to fail as closer to success as possible. If I can communicate merely a hint of what this idea means and why you don't understand it, that would be a success to me. So take this video as not the views of a subject matter expert on avidya, but the musings of a fool on the internet. So here goes nothing. What is avidya? The word avidya in chapter 383 Anadi Avidya, or beginningless ignorance, is a word that is common to all the Dhammic traditions of India, such as Hinduism, Buddhism, Sikhism, and Jainism. So what is avidya? Here's a theoretical take on it from the Hindu tradition. Avidya, or crudely understood as ignorance in English, is that portion of nature in a person in whom the sense of purity or wholesomeness is subordinated to passion, restlessness, and darkness, inertia, dullness. This is known as the sullied or impure state of wholesomeness, because it is impure on account of the predominance of passion, restlessness, darkness, inertia, dullness in a person. Avidya is an illusory power that disintegrates the divine into a million different fragments. Pleasure, pain, desire, karma, attraction, repulsion, delusion, pride, lust, egoism, anger, jealousy, etc. are all effects of avidya. Avidya is the source of all ignorance, sin, and misery. Avidya is beginningless, anadi, but it has an end. I'm sure you guys are hearing all of this and are going, man oh man, what a cloud of words. So I reached out to someone who actually understands avidya, and here is a more simplified answer in modern parlance from them. Avidya is a state of continuous self-unawareness It is an illusion that what is actually you is not you. What is not you, you take it as if it were you. This creates a state of mind which prevents you from discerning real from unreal, important from trivial. It is a disease of identification and misidentification, as in being unable to draw the lines where they belong, living in a fantasy world of one's own creation and suffering all the consequences of self-importance or self-pity. Still don't understand Avidya? That makes sense. Let's go deeper into why you might not understand Avidya. Why Avidya is hard to explain and much harder to grasp. When something that is an object is out of that is the subject's field of expertise and has no emotional attachments to you, it is easy to accept one's ignorance of it. If you are not a doctor, you are humble and willing to accept your ignorance on the subject of medicine. Same with engineering, art, business, psychology, etc. But as the distance between the subject and the object reduces to the point that it disappears, it becomes difficult for the subject, that is us, to accept his ignorance of the object, that is also us. Now, because this distinction disappears, the object can have undue influence on us, because now it operates from a place that is hidden from our attention. And it is not just a matter of physical distance. When we are emotionally attached to a person or a thing, whether that attachment be one of love or one of hate, we see them through the veil of our emotions imposed on them. How many times has it happened that at the start of a relationship, your friends see the red flags in who you are dating, but you have rose-tinted glasses on that prevent you from seeing those red flags? That person might be separate from you, but the emotions you attach onto them obscure your ability to see them as they are. Instead, you view them as your emotions tell you to see them. This difficulty arises because you, the subject, has to direct your attention not only outward but inward at yourself as well. And on top of that, you have to be honest about all that you see and feel within. Then this difficulty increases further if you have tried any kind of meditation where you have to pay attention to your breathing. You realize how quickly you lose track of it. One moment you are paying attention to your breathing, and the next moment you are caught in some thought. That leads to some other thought. That leads to some other thing. And you don't even know when this switch happened. In the same way, when are you looking inward and are the observer? When are you suddenly that which should be under observation? When are you gazing into the abyss that is you? When do you suddenly become this abyss that is you, gazing at some daydream? You see how difficult it is to be certain you are the one paying attention and are not possessed by that which you should be paying attention to? So the ability to be objective and impartial about what you see, hear, feel and experience about outer phenomena is a rare ability, and the ability to be objective, impartial about inner phenomena even rarer. This is because you, the subject, are immensely emotionally entangled with you, the object. So, when are you being honest to yourself about what you see in yourself? When are you lying to yourself and believing it? Another twist on this, what if the object we are to focus on is not only out of our field of expertise, not only not emotionally attached to us, but something that we just aren't even aware of? If you aren't even aware of it, how will you even pay attention to it? How will you even make this subject-object distinction? How will you then be humble about it? How can then someone communicate it to you? Take for example, when Guts kidnaps Farnese during the conviction arc, she, a devout religious person, can't see elves even when the elves interact with her directly. When Guts asks Puck why this is so, Puck says, when humans notice something, it stays in their memory. But if it is something they don't care about, they don't remember, do they? Sometimes people don't notice an elf right in front of them since it doesn't capture their attention. They can't even recall it happening. To get a non-mystical example of this, go watch a video of a magic trick. At first, most of us will not get how the trick was done. Then, when the magician reveals his trick, you'll now obviously see when the sleight of hands was done. What changed here? Your attention was deliberately engaged and the whole thing became demystified. Now, the same way, imagine how many things about ourselves, others, and the world are we completely oblivious about. How many things that exist in the background which we just never notice. Coming back to the Guts-Buck interaction, Guts then asks Buck why this is so. Buck says for some reason lots of priests are like that. Not in rural chapels, but when he goes to big cathedrals and big cities, he is not seen too much. Then he says that the old fortune teller lady from his entertainer troupe said, this is the case for those who cling to the rigid world and so do not perceive elves. My take on this rigid world idea bounces off something Schierke says further along in the series. She explains that once the one universal worldview of the Holy See doctrine spread, things like elves stopped being something people could naturally perceive. Essentially, a wrong or limited belief repeated long enough causes one to be unable to perceive that which is outside that belief. Not because that thing does not exist, but because their own reality shrunk to match their rigid belief. A demystified example of this is to imagine there being two people. One is a high IQ but timid person who sees a world full of fear and does not act on his desires. And on the other hand, there is a midwit or a stupid person who doesn't have this affliction. Who is more likely to live the life he wants and fulfill his desires? The stupid and midwit person, right? So, even though there is a difference in intelligence which should otherwise be an advantage, the person who is more stupider is more successful because they are more willing to take action. The reality of the person who is stupid has more possibilities than the reality which the intelligent but fearful person lives in. A good outcome is literally not in their perception or reality, which has become too tiny, and so it literally does not exist for them. Do you see what I mean here? Now imagine trying to convince Farnese about the existence of elves when she is first introduced. She would burn you at the stake as a heretic merely because she herself can't perceive it and would consider such things blasphemous and heresy. Thus, to come back to Avidya, this is why it becomes almost impossible to communicate Avidya to most of humanity, because they are not paying attention to the self. In fact, the self gets taken for granted like it is an already known thing. So, if you think and believe that you already know a thing that you aren't even aware of, and the whole world around you reinforces this notion by pretending they already know it, how will you then see your ignorance about it? To give an example of something similar to this from the Berserk verse, when Farnese is interrogating Guts at the start of the conviction arc, Guts asks her if she has met God. She replies with, God does not display his miracles on this earth lightly. He dwells always within our faith, in our hearts, as well as in heaven. Guts laughs at her and says, what a picture perfect answer. Did you study it in a convent? Clearly implying to Farnese that she is just repeating something she has been told and does not know herself. Heck, she does not even know how to figure it out if it's true or not. The worst manifestation of this kind of blind belief are Mosgus and his crew, who by believing madly and fanatically assert the truth of their faith. But if madness and fanaticism is the requirement for a truth to be the truth, the craziest person in a loony bin then becomes the one most in contact with the truth. This does not mean that what she believes in, that is God, is false, but that she doesn't actually know God but asserts a belief in Him anyway. So, even if we have these neat definitions of avidya, we will not get it. And I am right along with you guys in that same boat. It took me 4 months to do this video because after talking with someone who actually does understand avidya, I had to discard about 75% of my previous script for this topic. I was deluding myself that I understood avidya and kept comparing it to this idea and that idea. And you know what? Within that false belief, it all really did seem true to me. But once I talked to that person, that illusion shattered, just as the interaction with Guts shattered Farnese's illusion about her belief and showed her how hollow it was. So do I now understand avidya? No. How can you, the viewer, trust anything I say then? That's the thing. You should not trust my words because I say them or because of the way I say them. You should do your own experiments and see if I'm right or not. Skepticism is highly valued here. Whereas on my end, I'm trying to be really careful that I don't go past definitions and explanations I have seen online from religious sources and what I got from that person, and not add too much of my own interpretations here. How many people, me including, have strong beliefs about a subject even when we don't know for certain if our beliefs lie on the bedrock of truth? And furthermore, why do we believe something is the truth when we don't know it for certain? Silat makes the same point to Jaffa in his own way, right before Ganishka's second reincarnation. He says, "Is it right to yield oneself to something inscrutable?" Carl Jung, the famous psychiatrist, when he was asked if he believed in God, he said, "I don't need to believe, I know." But since we are far away from God and are all drowned in the ocean of believing without knowing, on and on the many examples of our ignorance goes, where without knowing what is true and false, we easily give in to believing. This ultimately becomes our ignorance of ourselves because we believe we already know ourselves. And so man suffers himself because he does not know himself. As you may or may not have already realized, man can live perfectly well without ever overcoming avidya. He can love, fight, rule nations, philosophize, act religious, write poetry, invent stuff, conquer planets and moons with rockets he has built, give life, take life, cure cancer, etc. without ever overcoming this veil on perception called avidya. When one is asleep, one believes all the fabrications one experiences in the dream that the sleep produces. It is only when they awaken that they realize what they were experiencing was this illusion called a dream. Similarly, you can know there is something called avidya by experiencing moments of waking up from it. And those wakeful moments could be glimpsing the fact that the story of yourself is not what you have been telling yourself. End of avidya. Now what could overcoming avidya mean and look like? Let's look at what it means in theoretical terms, and then in the next video we'll look at some examples from Berserk. Avidya to Vidya and Vidya to Prajna. Now we'll have to look at avidya through the lens of Hinduism and Buddhism, even though Guts is in a stupa, which is a Buddhist monument. This is because that is not a typical stupa. It has on top of it Hindu markings. You can see the Vaishnavite, that is follower of Vishnu marking. You can see the Shaivite, that is follower of Shiva markings. There are also other markings that I could not quite make out, so the stupa as depicted in Berserk is not entirely Buddhist. Now, depending on which doctrinal context you apply here, in Hindu terms, avidya could be transcended by the experience of vidya, that is wisdom, and lead to the experience of Brahman, that is supreme soul or God. Or in Buddhist terms, avidya or avidya could lead to the experience of prajna or panna, that is wisdom or insight into the emptiness, voidness, that is Sunyata or Anatman or non-self or no self of all phenomena. The Buddhist take, if it seems confusing, is that when you peel all the layers of illusory selves away, there is no permanent self. Or to better state this, whatever is left can't be categorized in the language of a self. It essentially says that all things are empty of a self and have this non-self or no self. This denial of a supreme soul or God or a real self or a real essence is part of much disagreement, however. In some factions of Buddhism, it is referred to as a strategy to reduce infatuation with the idea of a self. Sometimes it is stated that it is said to avoid giving form to something that is beyond words, which might lead to confusion, another form of avidya, and clinging. So, one should, according to Buddhist thought, when they peel away all the layers of the self, stay silent when in the presence of this experience. Now, it could be that both the experience of the Hindu Brahman and Buddhist Anatman are the same at the experiential level and are merely cloaked in different terms. But since I don't have an experience of either, I will neither assert nor deny them, but just share as I have how they appear to me and may fit into the world of Berserk. As I have said before, avidya has been confronted and transcended in Berserk before. In part 3, we will see these examples of transcending avidya and then look into the avidya of guts and how he may overcome it. Thanks for watching this series so far. I'll see you in part 3. Till next time, fellow strugglers.